Hi, I'm Kit Cassingham with Live in Focused Energy. Welcome to today's conversations, Move into Your Dreams. This is Conversations with Kit and Alex, and we have a guest, Corey, with us today. And our topic, which we all love, is courage. So, as a longevity coach, which is what I do at Live in Focused Energy, I love working with people who want to live with intention, who want to say yes to their world. And I love helping people make their lives better by changing their mindsets. And addressing courage is one way to help people address their mindset. Alex, tell us a little bit about you.
So my name is Alexandra Niel. I am a certified high performance and mindset coach, and I work with women executives who feel unfulfilled despite being successful. I help them to define what's important to them and make the right habit changes in their life so they can leave the legacy that they want to leave behind.
Excellent. And Corey, do you want to give a brief introduction?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Corey. I am an environmental consultant in Central Ohio, here to learn and contribute to the conversation.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You are most welcome. And you always have surprisingly insightful contributions. So I love it when you can make it. All right. So let's start with defining what courage is. Alex, do you have, I know you coach on this a lot.
I
do. You have a definition you like to use?
You know, I don't think there's a single definition because I think courage means different things for different people. I can give you some examples of what some of my clients have said about what being courageous means to them. And sometimes it's, you know, they've talked about being able to speak up for themselves. They've talked about having that difficult conversation with their spouse or their boss as being something that took a lot of courage. And I think the most standard thing I hear is, I did something even though I was afraid. So when I think about what courage is, it's all of those things and then some.
I like it. Corey, do you have any insights, or shall I come back to you later another time?
I mean, I always think of courage as the willingness to step outside of your comfort zone, whatever that might be.
That sums her up it nicely. So, okay. And I'm just going to add on to what you two have already said. Oh, and my cat is now with me.
That's okay. I'm sure she has something to say.
She does. She's going to tell us all about it. We'll never get a word in edgewise now. I see courage as doing what scares me, which is kind of what you said, Corey. Stepping outside your comfort zone. It's stepping into challenges. It's persisting through setbacks and issues and stuff. And courage can be a little tiny thing that makes a big difference. It's astounding what scares us and what we bring up from our souls, the pit of our stomachs, to help us move forward.
And I also want to acknowledge that for many people, courage is running into a burning building or putting your life on the line every day with the work, you know, that especially our law enforcement and military do every day. I think for them, it's a special brand of courage because it is so big, right? But it doesn't have to be so big for everyone.
Exactly, because we're not all designed to be police, law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, soldiers. I mean, all of that requires courage. But going on a vacation can take courage. So that's an example of the small thing it may not to say they're compare it to being a firefighter, but so yeah.
You know what? Even the firefighters have to have courage talking
Oh,
about their
absolutely.
feelings, right? Or having that discussion with their spouse. So even though they show up with big courage every day, it doesn't make them immune to having the courage to do those smaller things that make the world go round.
All right, well, here's a question. What if they use up all of their courage reserves fighting fires or fighting the bad guys? And then they don't have the courage to step up to be the good partner and have that tough conversation with the partner, the kids, fellow firefighters over, you didn't do the dishes again, whatever. So,
Yeah.
I mean, can we use up our courage?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know, but I would think that remembering why we're in a relationship, remembering why we do the things that we do, remembering who we are and who we choose to become gives us the courage that we need.
So I agree with you. And what if we get burned out, tired because of the amount of courage we've had to muster? And we're too tired to keep going. I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but it just all of a sudden struck me that I wonder if we can. Is it a lifestyle? Is it an energy reserve? Is it an attitude?
Maybe it's a little bit of both or of all. But I also feel like sometimes we just need to take a break. And
we absolutely do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to take the time we need to take for ourselves to replenish those reserves so we can have a productive conversation. If that happens to be what's there, it's perfectly okay to say, you know what? I can't do this right now. I need some space to rest, replenish, and think. And I'm happy to come back and talk about this when I've been able to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, the way that you just described it, it almost sounds like the description of an introvert going out into society, interacting with people, right? I mean, you go and say you're an introvert, you go to a social event, you use up all of that energy, and then you can't do the basic smaller tasks, if that's drained your battery and you need to go rest. So I guess the question is then, is courage something akin to introversion, where it requires you to kind of go back, recharge, and go back out there? Or is it just a character trait? Or is it, like Alex said, maybe a little bit of both?
Yeah. Good observation. And maybe we'll find the answer as we talk today.
Okay.
I do know that first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMT, have very high suicide rates. And when I was going through EMT training, I learned that if we don't face those horrid experiences, talk them through, get support, kind of purge our system of that emotion, that we do burn out. And it breaks my heart when I hear of first responders committing suicide. And maybe I've just changed the subject. I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either. I think there's a mental health component, which is different from courage. And it's a component of consistently taking care of ourselves. Yes. Especially when we give so much for others.
Yeah.
But I do agree that when we get to the point where we're at the end of our rope, it doesn't matter if it's courage, if it's energy, whatever it is, there's just no more to give. And that's the time to really take that step back and recharge.
So I'm going to guess that my wondering if we use it up is addressing the mental health component of life. And that courage, I'm going to be bold and say courage is part of our character. It's part of our mindset. We may have to bolster our courage to do things, but it has to be there a little bit to bolster.
Yeah.
There has to be a kernel of courage.
I think it's both a skill and a muscle. And both of those you can grow.
Yeah. And I'll say it's a mindset, which may be in that collection of.
Yeah.
So, okay. How is courage used in life? Like, Alex, how do you use courage in your life?
I use courage when, especially as a business owner, and having to market myself and my services and all of these things that are not comfortable. Corey, you were talking about, getting out of your comfort zone. I feel like I'm in perpetual discomfort zone, right? Because there is attached with that courage is that fear of being rejected. It's the fear of not measuring up, fear of being compared to other people. All of those things, when you show up courageously, you open yourself up to any one of those things and more. So that's how courage shows up for me is, I need to, or if I want to serve my community, I need to step up. I need to show up, because otherwise I don't get my message out there and I'm not serving my community the way that I want to serve them.
Which means you're doing a huge disservice to them because you have a lot to give. Okay. For me, I use courage to grow, to learn, expand my horizons and possibilities. I remember when I started my first business, I had a job, and it was kind of a temp job. It was a temp job. And I was doing it to bring money in. And I very carefully and dutifully worked extra hours because every Friday I would go to my Toastmasters group, and it would take 2 hours in between the commute and the being there and doing stuff. And one day they said, "You can't go to Toastmasters anymore." And I said, "Oh, but I make up my time. There's, it's not like you're losing my work." And they said, "No, but we need you at your desk these hours every day. So you can't go." And I said, "Well, then I quit." And they said, "Oh, we're kidding." I said, "And I'm not."
Yeah.
I had a knot in my stomach.
Yeah, I believe it.
But that helped launch me into that first coaching career of mine. And when I'm feeling a little hesitant and stepping back, I remember that I felt like I jumped off a cliff without a parachute and learned to fly.
I know that feeling.
I bet you do. And I'll bet Corey does too. Corey, how do you use courage in your life?
I mean, I think you use it in a lot of different aspects, both big and small. I've had a couple of like you just said, jumping off a cliff without a parachute moments where you learn something new about yourself and learn that you can do something you didn't think you could do. And obviously, those are things you remember, but I think you use it every day in smaller ways as you're living life. Like I think you go to a restaurant and you try a dish you've never tried that maybe you're not sure you'd like. I mean, it's not like what we would always say in movies is a courageous act, but it's not something that, it's not the norm. So I think courage and the willingness to learn go hand in hand.
What you just said about the restaurant, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the person was talking about being bold. And she was saying, like, a lot of people just accept their lot in life. They don't fight for things. They don't try to grow. They don't try to expand their horizons. And one of the examples that she gave was, you go to a restaurant, you get your food and it's cold, and people don't send it back. Or you get a steak and you wanted it rare and you get it, shoe leather, and you eat it anyways and you don't push back. So, it's those little things that at the end of the day kind of go into your confidence bank, right? You stand up for yourself, you speak up for yourself, you ask for what you need and for what you want. And that gives you, not only does it give you confidence, but it adds to your courage bank too.
Almost sounds
I like that
like
concept.
self-advocating is courage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the confidence bank concept as a way to something to put the courage into. So I always have a reserve of it if I'm a little slacking at some point. Okay. So I accidentally jumped the gun.
Okay.
Alex and I agreed that you can't talk about courage without talking about fear. How does fear serve us in our lives? What is fear?
For me, fear is a signal that something needs to be addressed. Sometimes we're fearful because we know that we're going to go beyond whatever expectations people have of us. We know that, we might be breaking a rule, or we have our own limitations, our own baggage. Sometimes we are fearful because of the stories that we tell ourselves, right? And it shows up in so many different ways. It can show up as imposter syndrome. It can show up as, I don't know, feeling like you're not good enough, smart enough, strong enough, whatever, insert word before enough. All that is really fear driven. But when you think about what does that mean, it just means that there's something there that you need to look into, right? And let's be honest, fear is a habit, and fear is really, honestly, it's a decision. We can choose to, when it comes, be fearful, but we can choose to be curious. And if you choose to be curious over fearful, that changes the whole ballgame.
In my world, there are two kinds of fear. There's the fear that saves your life. It's because you jump out of the way of the speeding car. You are alerted to the charging mountain lion or the rock falling off the cliff, and pull back. When we're born, we're afraid of loud, sudden sounds, which are danger signals often, and we're afraid of falling. You know that children and animals won't walk on a plexiglass platform that looks like it's got a big drop below. That is life-saving fear. And then there's the life-stealing fear. It's the fear that puts you in a cave, locks you away, doesn't let you experience your full marvelousness, the full beauty of the world. And that's the stuff that, yes, takes the curiosity, the decision to move forward. I have a class called Face It to Change It, and it's all about learning to deal with fear.
And, it's funny because as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and actually many people have this fear of failure, right? So they get paralyzed because they don't want to do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, make the wrong decision, whatever the case may be. But the thing is that if you don't take action, you're pretty much guaranteed to fail anyways. So
That's right.
just do something, anything. You can always make a different decision. You can always change course. And if you fail, you learn.
If you have the right mindset
If you have
and look at it and evaluate it. But yeah, you have the opportunity to learn. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And taking action is the advice that comes out in all of my fear classes. When you take action, you move through it.
Yeah. You lean into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you may not do it with as much grace or confidence as you'd like, but when you get through it, you have grown, and you can do it better next time and next time. So taking action and facing that fear helps build your courage.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, Corey, you've dated before. Did it take courage to ask somebody out?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What did it take courage to serve the first meal you cooked for your family or your friends?
I mean, I guess that all depends on the size of the fear is relative to the size of the consequence, right? Or yeah, at least your perceived consequence. So
Perceived, yeah.
I knew that, I could serve slop on a plate and I wouldn't get like berated by my family. So that didn't require quite as much courage. But yeah, I mean, I think everything to some degree when you're doing it for the first time or it's something unknown is going to require some degree of courage.
When I was a bed and breakfast innkeeper, I managed other people's inns for them. And friends were in between managers and asked me to come be their innkeeper for the summer. And I wasn't used to cooking at their elevation. Some of the things I cooked, they were horrified that I put out. But I would say to the guests, I've never done this before here. So sorry if it's not perfect. They loved my courage. And they'd say, well, I don't like raw pizza dough, but I like the topping, as an example. And so it worked out. And that just gave me funny stories to tell about myself.
Yeah. No, but it's true. It's some of the smaller things, we always, when we get in our head is where the problem starts, right? Tony Robbins says, you're in your head, you're dead. So the more we can do, right? Action is one way to get out of our head. And it doesn't have to be big things, right? We were talking about the restaurant example before. You know what? You want salt on the table? Ask for salt on the table. So it doesn't have to be huge things. It's doing little things multiple times, time and time again, that builds that confidence and builds that courage, that courage muscle.
And to go back to what you were saying, the story you're telling yourself keeps you from returning the food, asking for the salt, asking for another glass of water.
Yeah. Keeps us playing small.
Yes. And the consequences usually are inconsequential compared to what we think they're going to be and fear they're going to be. So we tell ourselves those stories and we make it a big deal.
Yeah. The problem is they're super damaging to us.
The stories. Absolutely. In fact, fear is damaging to us. I've just finished reading an interesting book called Brain Energy. And I think a chapter on it was about all the hormones that we create, the cortisol, et cetera, when we're fearful. And his bottom line is our damaged mitochondria is what affects our mental health, our physical health. He said, so when you let fear rage inside you, all those hormones are damaging your mitochondria. And that lowers your immune system, weakens it. It does a variety of things, lowers your energy. So learn, it's not just because you're going to have more fun when you step into your courage. You're stepping into your life, literally.
Yeah.
You're stepping into a healthier life, a more productive life.
And the thing is, both with fear and courage, those two things are contagious. So if you live with someone who's fearful, right? If a child lives with parents who are afraid of everything, they become afraid of everything. If they live with people or parents who show them, not that there's nothing to fear, but show them what it's like to be courageous and what happens on the other side of courage, they learn a completely different set of skill. So I'm not a parent, but if someone's a parent, if I were a parent, I would want to teach my child that courage is something to be valued versus fear, which is, keeping you in your box.
And when you put it this way, Alex, what comes to my mind is we're talking about teaching ourselves and our kids or the people in our lives about open mindset and closed mindset.
Yeah.
Infinite mindset and limited mindset. So I think that is real important to be aware of, that the open mindset, the positive mindset is more focused towards courage.
And when we show up courageously, we give other people permission to do the same, because they see that, you know what?
Yeah.
It turned out okay. It seems like it turned out okay. Right? So maybe I can take a small step.
Yeah. I was going to ask what causes courage to be a limited resource in our lives. I think we've kind of covered that with our conversations.
Yeah, maybe.
Your point of it's the stories we tell.
Yeah.
Ourselves. It's the open mindset. It's when we block those things, we do limit ourselves.
Mm. And there's something that I just wanted to share, because in preparation for the call today, I did a little bit of research, and I was reading that there are 3 different types of courage. And I was like, okay, let me dig into that a little bit. And the first type of courage is moral courage. And that is speaking up for others and enduring hardships for what we believe is right in terms of the greater good. So Rosa Parks refusing to sit in the back of the bus, that took moral courage, right? Then there is psychological courage. And psychological courage is facing or overcoming our own anxieties, insecurities, and mental fears, so that we can not only be our authentic self, but also experience that personal growth that, Corey, you were talking about. Mm-hmm. Right? So even if it's only for ourselves, that psychology of overcoming our fears, our stories, our insecurities, that's psychological courage. And then the last one is everyday courage, which is really about keeping a positive attitude and taking action despite being fearful. And maybe it's about, I know in my case, courage showed up as leaving my full-time gig so that I could follow my passion in coaching when I had no client base. I didn't have a business. I had to start everything from scratch. It could be, dealing with an illness. It could be showing up every day to a job that doesn't fulfill you. Right. So I just found it interesting that there are different ways that, or different types of courage that we encounter every day in our lives.
That was good information. And to go back to the Rosa Parks concept, the moral courage. I have a friend who went to lunch with a friend, and I'm going to call them Bob and Sue. Bob is my friend, and Sue was Bob's lunch date. And they were seated in a section that had a Black waitress. And Sue made some comment about her Blackness, the waitress's Blackness. Very derogatory, very unpleasant. She was mean. And Bob stood up and said, I cannot abide by that behavior. And he left, apologizing to the waitress, giving her a tip for her efforts of, serving the water and putting silverware. I was touched by Bob's story, because I also would not have liked Sue's behavior. I, at that time, don't think I would have had the moral courage to do what Bob did. The only consequence of that is Sue wouldn't have liked me anymore if I had done that. Do I want a friend like Sue?
Good question. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I've not had to test myself on that. But I hope that I will be like Bob.
Be like Bob.
We like Bob.
Be like Bob.
Be like Bob. All right, we've also been addressing what we can do to increase our courage levels. I wonder if there's anything else we can add to that.
We talked
Tell
about
myself a different story. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Telling myself a different story when I
Yeah.
hear the head starting to spiral down.
Yeah.
No, we're not going there. Let's change this story. Let's stay up here or go higher. Ooh, that's a good idea. Let's even be more energetic or more courageous. Raising my vibrations, which you don't just change that, but that's related to the positive mindset, the open way of thinking, I believe.
Yeah. I think for me, it's a couple of things come to mind. One is education. Sometimes we're fearful because we just don't know. So
Yes.
it's picking up a book or taking a course or something that gives us more information so we can make the right decision or better decisions and not feel so fearful about what we have in front of us. And the second piece is being vulnerable. I'll give you an example. My beau and I went or attended Date with Destiny at the end of last year. And we've been working on, our values, on a whole bunch of different things. And we had a discussion yesterday or day before yesterday where he was asking me, okay, so what are the things that you see when you see me at my best self? So I talked about resilience, I talked about courage, I talked about drive, I talked about, his playfulness, so a bunch of different things. And then I said to him, I said, can I give you the other side of the coin?
That took courage.
Right? And it took more courage on his part to say, yeah, I want to hear. And then we switched.
And to listen. And to
Yeah.
listen to what you had to say. Yeah.
And then we switched. So then I asked him the same thing, and he gave me both the good side and the things that he feels that I should want to work on to get to my next level. So being
Based on
his perception. And I mean,
based on his perception of what he sees you wanting, what he hears you
correct.
talking about, he's going, well, if you're
Knows
talking
what my
like
goals
this,
are.
why are you acting
Yeah,
like this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He knows what my goals are. He knows what my wants are. And he
And
knows
your
that
values.
in order for me to show up as my best self, these are some of the things that maybe I want to not do as much or eradicate, right? So being able to have that vulnerability in sharing information, but also the humility of receiving information. All of that takes courage.
Yeah. When I decided to walk the Camino de Santiago 6 years ago, I was doing it with a friend, and I did a lot of research. What is the climate like? They're using euros, but how much does stuff cost? What kind of gear do I need? I don't really speak Spanish. I know a few words. I know how to ask for my water without ice. But I need to learn more. And so I really got into researching the things to do along the way and how long it takes and where to stay. And then my walking partner backed out. She had a chance to become a foster mom. I'm going, well, good.
At that. Dang it.
And as I was doing a live video for Facebook to say, here's Kit, not on the Camino, because everybody knew I was going to be on the Camino on such and such a day. And one of another friend who I didn't know well, I'd met before, but she messaged me and said, well, I'm going to go in 6 months if you want to join me. So we decided we would go together, but we would do our own thing. So if one of us wanted to turn right, the other could turn left if we wanted, knowing we'd come back. And, that felt like a courageous thing. And walking 500 miles takes a certain kind of courage or stamina.
A good pair of
Insanity.
shoes.
Take your pick. I had great shoes, not a blister to be had from the shoes. And so I have decided to walk the way of St. Francis in Italy. And it's much shorter. It's only 350 miles, though it's harder, so it takes the same amount of time. And I don't have anybody to go with. And I argue with myself every day of why I have to go anyway. It's because you're afraid. It's something you want to do. You love this stuff. And so keeping that courage strong. I've been working on learning some Italian. Still got my good walking shoes. And all my gear. And now it's just to set the dates and start finding where I want to stay, and I'm booking reservations and getting my airline. That's a very different kind of courage than we've been talking about. And I wouldn't think of it as courage, except when I tell people what I've done or what I'm going to do, they go, you are such a courageous person. For me? No.
Yeah. I heard the same thing when I transferred to China for 1.5 years.
Where did you go in China?
I was in Shanghai.
Oh, great city, isn't it?
It was like, you're so courageous to go. And I'm like, I'm just going to live in China. I mean, to me, it was not a big, not a big deal. But I can see how, similar to your situation, how it is big, it could be big for other people.
Yeah. Big enough that people aren't going to move to China, even to Shanghai. They're not going to do a pilgrimage, even if it's just a short 5-day one or a 3-day one. I walk from Ridgeway to Ouray as part of my training. It's 12, 13, 15 miles, whatever. And people think that that's nuts. And I go, it's a simple, short walk. And I reward myself by eating at such and such. Well, I ate at the Bonton or the Buen Tiempo, but that's gone now. So I'll have to find another reward. But
find another choice spot.
Yeah. And there are more choice spots. But so if people won't walk 12 miles from between the two towns they know, their fear is really holding them back. And if they won't move to Shanghai or to middle of Ohio, or it's too bad that they're letting their fear control them and not boosting their courage to support them live the life they want.
That is provided there are no other, health reasons or anything else that, could be getting in the way. But if really it's a question of fear, it's like, you know, one of the ways that I've been able to push past my fear is by asking a very simple question. And the question I used to always ask, or that I would ponder, is I would worry about what the worst thing was that could happen. And I would just spiral down into like a frenzy, right? When I started asking, what is the best that can happen? Completely changed everything. Because instead of focusing on the fear and the negative, I was focusing on that curiosity and the positive things that could come out of a situation, because our brain is here to protect us. You know, you were talking about the saber-toothed tiger or the, you know, whatever, I can't remember exactly
The
what it was.
bear,
Yeah.
the weapon wielding thug, whatever.
And that's what the brain is there for, right? It's there to help us survive. It's there to protect us. It's there to keep us on, you know, keep us on our toes. It's not designed to help us to succeed. So in order for us to succeed, we have to really make concerted effort to set aside as much as we can the things that don't serve us in today's day and age. And getting in front of a camera is not a life-threatening situation. Unless you're
Not
being
very
held for
often.
ransom, and then maybe then that's going to be a really key video that you're going to make. But for the most part, not so much.
Right. Good points. Corey, do you have anything to add to this discussion? Are there things, do you have fears that hold you back from doing what you want, of living the life you dream of?
I mean, probably the same as everybody, you know, fear of failure, you know, that sort of stuff. But what kind of struck me as we were talking about everything was, you know, I think that as you're trying to improve your courage and make yourself, you know, more willing to get out there and, you know, put yourself out there, it also, you have to start countering your aversion to conflict. You know, I think that holds people back. And, you know, Alex was saying, like, I need another refill on my water, or I need my steak recooked. I think a part of why people don't do that is, well, I don't want to make waves.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to upset someone because I was unhappy. I don't want to make them unhappy. And I think that that's a struggle for people. You know, I guess that's kind of an entirely different trait that, you know, we'd have to delve into about how to improve that. But I think that courage, you know, and Alex said all these different types of courage, you know, the moral courage, the psychological courage, all these different courages, they're tied to all these other aspects of our lives. And so I think to just, you know, I don't think you can say, well, I'm just going to be more courageous, because then it's like, well, doing what?
Yeah.
And what else is that going to require of you? You know, are you going to need to learn to be, you know, more able to put yourself out there and conflict with people, or, you know, not be afraid of failure? There's a lot of different aspects tied to it.
Well, I'm going to step in and say, sometimes what we call conflict isn't conflict, it's a conversation with differing opinions.
Yeah.
And talking about it doesn't have to be conflict. It can be an exploration. It's like, oh, that's interesting, Corey. Tell me more. How did you get to that? And that's not, I mean, I didn't say, oh, you stupid guy. Come on. That's conflict.
Yeah.
So if we would change our attitude of how we approach these conversations, that would help probably boost our courage and drop our fear.
I agree. I also think that there is so much conflict going around these days, where everybody's heckles are up. Everybody feels like, and I'm, you know, big generalization, obviously, but a lot of people feel like, well, if you're not with me, you're against me. And it's like, but no, we can talk about stuff. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make us wrong necessarily. We just happen to disagree. It's really not a big deal.
We have different opinions or experiences.
Exactly.
It's,
Uh,
yeah.
You're talking about different experiences. I published, or I put on my Facebook profile the other day an article about how women who go to see a doctor are often either misdiagnosed or dismissed before they're taken seriously.
Yes.
And I posted it on Facebook because I had that experience where it took into my 50s to be diagnosed with something gynecological. And somebody posted back on my post, well, this is, what was it? Mass media propaganda and blah, blah. Every time I've gone to the doctor, I've never had that problem. I was taken care of super well. And I'm like, I'm so happy you were taken care of well.
Bravo.
And that you didn't have to experience this. But it doesn't minimize what happens.
It doesn't change your experience.
Millions of other women who have not had that same experience. And it ended up being a conflictual situation to the point where I ended up just taking everything offline because it was devolving, and there was nothing good coming out of it because of that, opposition, conflict, situation.
I wish you'd put it back so I could jump in and say something supportive for you.
No, the article is still there. I just deleted all the BS underneath.
Well, and that's appropriate. That's appropriate. Yeah. I have a client. We were talking about her energy the other day, and I said, "So have you had your blood work checked?" She goes, "No, I don't go to the doctor." I said, "Why?" She goes, "Because I'm fat and female." What? She goes, "Because I'm fat, I'm dismissed. Because I'm female, I'm dismissed. And I'm tired of the battle." So we talked about how she could do it without going to a doctor. But I said, you need to track this stuff.
Yeah.
It takes courage to know what your health situation is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I had a thought, or I guess a thought and a question related back to what you were saying. Actually, you and Alex saying it. Conflict is a lot of times just a discussion of differing opinions. And Alex said something that was kind of along the lines of what I was thinking, is that a lot of times people today identify their beliefs so strongly with themselves that it's not an intellectual conversation. And I think that's where it gets hard, right? Like, obviously, if it were just an intellectual, we're in at a college in debate class, I could talk against someone else's opinion all day. But when it's like people view a conflicting opinion as attacking themselves, that's where it's not easy to have those conversations.
Agreed.
And I think that is a difficult thing to overcome.
I agree. And honestly, depending on the level of self-awareness that the person has, I think that has a lot to do with whether or not you can even find or begin to think you can find common ground. There are times where the only option you have really is that's it, because no amount of discussion can ever bridge that gap. Because the moment that we tie something to our identity and to who we are, we want to hold on to that because it's part of who we are. It's not. That's why I hate to say, example, I'm fat. No, I have the habits of somebody who doesn't eat healthy food. So if you think that way and you're trying to lose weight, it's a lot easier to lose weight by changing the habits than losing my identity as a fat person.
Yeah.
And, it takes courage all around, but yeah.
Well, I think the reason for having a conversation can make a difference as to whether it's a back and forth informative conversation versus a debate to get one of you to change your mind. I think I've used this before, but there was a Black man who befriended a KKK, Grand Poobah, whatever they call their top guy. And his first question was, "How can you hate me? You don't even know me." And so they started to have a conversation about what they liked and didn't like and what their kids did. And they formed a friendship. And through time, I mean, the black guy wasn't trying to convince the white guy to like him. He just put a good question to him. And ultimately, the KKK dropped his robes and left the group, and others followed him. And I thought, that's the way more conversation should be. Just to say, want to get to know me?
Yeah.
You might learn something fun or interesting.
It goes back to that curiosity that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to do a call on curiosity one of these days.
There you go. Add it to your list.
It's a multifold now.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, anything else to add to this conversation, or have we wrung this one out for the moment?
I mean, I think we can talk about courage endlessly, right? So
Yeah, I think we can.
I'm good. I don't think there's anything else that I wanted to add.
Okay. Nash now has things to say. Well, then, let's sign off. Do you want to start with that, or shall I?
Go for it.
I'm Kit Cassingham, longevity coach with Live in Focused Energy. I love working with people who want to live with intention and to say yes to their lives. I have learned that when you argue for your limitations, they're yours. So I want to teach you to argue for your possibilities. I have two things to offer the audience. One is a pair of workshops. I'm doing one of each every month. One is called Face It to Change It. It is helping you get more courage in your life. And the other is Energize Me, to help you get more energy in your life. And the other one is a YOS discovery, so that you can learn why you do what you do. And I will put those links in the show notes, or in this case, in the below.
And I'm Alexandra Niel, certified high performance and mindset coach, and I help women executives who feel unfulfilled despite their success to figure out what's important to them so they can change their habits and leave a meaningful and enduring legacy. And if you're in a place where you're questioning whether you might be a square peg in a round hole, or you feel like you're going through the motions at work and there's got to be more to life than what you are going through right now, I'll put a link in the comments below for a free one-on-one jumpstart session with me for 30 minutes. And I look forward to spending time with you.
That sounds great. And I did not print off. Alex, do you know what our discussion is next week? Oh, I bet I do. I mean, next month. Huh.
No, I didn't write it down either.
Well, we had talked about doing sitting is the new smoking. And we may change that to are you having fun yet, or the challenge excites me.
Okay.
So
we'll figure it out.
Come on next month and see what we're going to talk about.
There you go.
All right. Well, then I will stop the recording and we'll sign off.
Sounds good.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.